Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to have on the show today the creators of the comic book, The Matron, and the Kickstarter is going on right now. Sweet. I love the baby scream intro. It's like my new favorite
Oh,
thing.
no. I was about to ask if you could hear that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. Like, I love it. It's real
love,
life,
love
right?
of my life.
Fine.
Hold
I
on here.
promise you it's
No,
fine.
just mute yourself for a second, Drew.
No.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
No, because this also shows that we all have lives outside of what we create, right? Because
Yes.
a lot of times people want to create things and they're like, well, I have a family. And it's like, it's proof that you can have it both. You know what I mean? Like the family, the not family, the create, the whole environment of it all. So please, by all means, let that baby say, I want to be on this show too. But
She's like,
welcome,
I'm
guys.
involved in the creation of the Matron. I deserve to be on that show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. But welcome, guys, so much. I really appreciate you guys taking time to talk to me about your new Kickstarter, The Matron. I have a lot of questions, and I'm just excited to get to know you guys. Well, like I said, I know Drew already. So if you guys don't mind introducing yourself a little bit and letting us know what part you have in The Matron.
Sweet. Okay, I'll start then. Everybody, I'm David Bowles. I'm a Mexican-American writer and translator from Deep South Texas. I live on the border with Mexico. And I am the co-creator and co-author of The Matron, along with my buddy, Drew.
Do you want me to go?
I guess so.
I think because I've been on the show multiple times, I'm comfortable with going dead last. Emphasis on dead.
Okay. I'm Monica Gallagher, and I am illustrating The Matron, and I was lucky enough to meet these guys and be accepted into the fold. So yeah, that's my role.
Howdy. I am Drew Edwards. I am the, I guess, co-creator, co-writer, co-conspirator, gorehound extraordinaire behind the mate, and I am a comic book writer. As long-term viewers of this show know, I am mostly known for the award-winning Halloween Man, so people other than me thought it was good. And I am also on the Castle of Horror podcast when I'm not making comic books, and I am excited to be back. This is awesome. I love having these long-term relationships with podcasts. So, yay.
It's my favorite thing because I'm also a fan. So when I saw that it was a war room, I was like, yes, you see, all this time I've been saying it's good. So I'm like super excited for you. Now, how did you guys all get together? Did you guys know each other before the comic? Was somebody like, hey, I want to do this comic, and you threw out a filler? How did you guys come together?
So yeah, Drew and I have known each other for about a decade. Because I met him through Jason Henderson, who is the host of the podcast that he is a member. I didn't even know what to call you guys. You're like a panel of experts on horror films, right? Castle of Horror. And through Jason, I met Drew, and we have a lot of things in common. Obviously, love of horror films and so forth. I also have a couple of comic series for younger readers and for teenagers, and we were, we've presented a couple of things together, and I've been a guest on the podcast. But about 3 years ago, we were at Central Texas Kids and Teen Comic-Con in Round Rock, right outside of Austin. And in the midst of a lull, I told my daughter, who illustrates one of my comic series with me, hey, I'm gonna go hang out with Drew for a while. And she's like, yeah, go do whatever you want. She's like reading. And I walked over and we started chatting, and it would just, we were talking about, I guess, like the most recent Texas Chainsaw film that like kind of picked up many years later, ignoring all the sequels in the middle. And he's like, I actually had a very similar pitch that I made. I really wanted to do a Texas Chainsaw Massacre a comic, and had some really, really neat ideas. And it was a bummer that I didn't get to do it, but I still think the ideas are viable and valuable. And he pitched it to me. He told me what it was, and I fell in love with the idea. And I go, dude, you really ought to do that as like an independent comic. Just change things around, and this is a really cool idea. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, and would you consider like doing it with me? Let's do it together. And he actually enjoyed the idea, and so we got together and started beating the idea out. And that's really how I came to come to the project. So definitely this started with Drew's little twisted mind, and then I added all of my twisted mind to it as well, and out popped the Matron. It's a little more complicated than that, but we'll get into it. Drew, I don't know if you want to go into any more detail about that, and the thing that you pitched to me at that moment, what your idea had been.
Sure. Well, I was about to say about some stuff about bringing Monica in, but we'll get around it. We'll get around all of it.
I'm thinking chronological order, bro. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Chronological orders for the week.
You already know. Yeah, no, he already knows how like anal I am about this kind of stuff. So.
Oh yeah. It was. I'm not going to name the publisher that I was with because it's now 2 decades in the past. But there was a publisher that I was associated with that had the rights to do comics based off of Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm well noted, like anybody who's listened to Castle of Horror or even talked to me for more than a day knows that I am a gigantic Friday the 13th fan. But the publisher said, well, you're a shoo-in for that. You're just already consider that you are the writer of Friday the 13th, but could you also pitch us your best Texas Chainsaw Massacre? And I was like, I am a devotee of the franchise, not to the level of other things, but I was like, well, at the time I was a butcher, and I am also from Texas, so I get why that he thought that I might have a unique perspective on the whole butcher about the whole Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing. And so what I pitched him was called The Last Days of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it was kind of rooted. So when I was working as a butcher, I lived on a farm out in McKinney, Texas, and I would drive into Plano, Texas. And the more I did this drive over time, the more it became clear, because this is in the DFW area, Dallas-Fort Worth area, that Dallas was just encroaching further and further into these small towns. So the idea of the supposed wide open spaces of Texas weren't so wide and weren't so open anymore really stuck with me. And then I started thinking about the family from the family of cannibals from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and how gentrification might affect them if their spooky farmhouse suddenly has a Starbucks sprouting up right down the street from it. And that was the thrust of the pitch. It also was very much in, I sort of was thinking, I could do like Dark Knight Returns, but with Leatherface, because I love taking a look at a character at the end of their ropes. Like if you take these sort of like mythic figures and see what their last ride, their old gunfighter moment, like that kind of thing. I've always found that to be a fascinating place to approach a story from. When talking to David, since we were having to not use Leatherface now because this was becoming its own thing, it hit on me that it might be more interesting if our killer, because Leatherface is actually a rather passive character within the Texas. He's sort of his family's attack dog. it hit me that it might be more interesting if it was like the family matriarch, someone that was basically the leader of her family that was the killer, because the idea of it being an older woman was just so much more fascinating to me. And, I know that was an idea that David really gravitated to as well. And in fact, we kicked around the name the matriarch for a while.
Yeah,
but
until suddenly you started saying, I've been wanting to say this for a long time. And so this is a great opportunity to share with the world. We kept saying the matriarch, and then like suddenly Drew started saying the matron, and I would correct him. I'd go, oh, you mean the matriarch? And then the third time he said the matron, I was like, wait a minute, the matron that's actually better than the matriarch. The matron, like, think
rolls
about
off the tongue better, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it has all these, like, I don't know, nuances, about like this like sturdy working class, woman who maybe is now in a position of some authority or whatever over other people, and it just, I don't know, I liked it a lot. And when after we could probably talk about some of these details later, but once we kind of like we had hammered out like what we wanted to look like, and we were able to make a pitch. The question became who could illustrate this, right? And we looked at a couple possibilities, but Drew kept coming back to Monica. Like, why? That sounds terrible. Why?
No, it's not. It shocked the hell out of me. So,
but yeah, explain a little bit, like, in this way we can kind of loop Monica in and see what she.
Well, I've known Monica for now several years. I first met her. Was it at Staple or Haven Con? I know it was one of. I want to say it was Haven Con.
Like, I used to come to Staple. I've been to Staple like 5 times before I moved to Austin. So we probably crossed paths, because I've definitely like met people now that I've looked back at, like swag I've gotten from Staple, which is like an indie comics expo, a great one in Austin, and like realize that I know people now that I like crossed paths with. So we probably did interact at some point before I actually moved here. But we were near each other, and Drew's like the kind of guy who is just very gregarious and like actually like talks to people at comic conventions, which is very rare, because a lot of us are just like, like doing our own thing, like used to being antisocial. So yeah, I think it was Haven Con. That was the first time, at least I remember talking to you, and that was like right post COVID.
Yeah. I for the sake of this discussion, that makes the most chronological sense.
It might not be reality, but we're going with it.
I remember seeing her table, and she had this very great comic book called Bonnie and Clyde, and I love puns. It's about a roller derby chick, and her boss is a werewolf, and I love werewolves. But also she had all these.
That makes sense.
Yeah. What? But she also had all these great prints with cryptids on it, and at the risk of sounding predatory, as from somebody who's been doing a monster book for almost 25 years, when I see somebody is good at drawing monsters, I almost immediately am like, I want to work with this person. They draw great monsters, so there was this like, oh my God, I love this art, I love this art, and this enthusiasm. So when we were kicking around artists' names for this project, I was like, here's my chance to work with Monica. And again, I don't want to sound predatory about it. It's rooted actually in a really wholesome thing that I think she's tremendously talented. And also, in the interest of keeping David and I honest, I thought it was better to not have a creative team that was a giant sausage fest, because the title character, it's obviously the matron. There is a certain feminine energy. So I thought it was better to have a woman artist, but also somebody that had tremendous horror potential in their art, even if you didn't necessarily think of yourself that way.
Yeah, and I think that's a shout out to comic conventions. So a lot of times, like younger creators ask me, like, how do you get started? How do you get jobs? And I'm always like, just go to comic conventions because the community is very, very supportive. And that's the only place I've ever gotten comics jobs and met people who I still have friends with for, over 20 years. Just go to comic conventions and meet people, especially like near where you are, and even not like,
Yeah. No, that's like 100% great advice. It's a lot of times. So I interview people who create video games, comic books, and cosplayers from all walks of life. Like they're, just starting, or they're considered like professional expert level. And when they're like, when people are starting and they're like, oh, I can't afford a table, I'm like, get yourself a business card, get yourself a mini like print book instead of like lugging around your art book, get a mini one and network. Because those are our people. Those are the people that understand, like they're either starting off just like you, or they've, are on the next step, or, they're close to retiring, and you can absorb so much information and so much knowledge from that. So I'm so grateful that you said that, because it's one of the things I say as well. So great minds, great minds.
Yeah. And I think like, I wonder, I worry about younger creators now because I think they're more fixated on like being online rather than interfacing in person. But I mean, those face-to-face relationships are just solid gold,
For sure. So how did you feel, Monica, when they approached you with the idea? Did they both come were like, hey, we would like for you, or was it just one or the other?
No, I've never seen David in person, so I don't know if he exists for real.
Yeah, no, I'm purely an AI creation. Drew programmed an AI, and now I just say what he wants.
You generated an AI named David. That's great.
No, I was extremely flattered and also fucking terrified. It's just like, I was like, oh, thank you so much. And then like, oh God, how do I do this? And how do I make this look cool? And I was so relieved. You guys are so kind. I think just even the initial character sketches that you encouraged me, and I was like, oh, thank God, I'm not going to really mess this up. I mean, it's still right, but.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, like when we decided on the design of the matron, when we decided that we were going to be drawing from, so the Hill Country, for those of you who are listening to this and don't know, the Hill Country of Texas is the central part of the state, and it is this really interesting. I mean, everybody knows San Antonio and Austin, but there are all these small towns between them and all grouped around them that are like a really fascinating blend of Mexican, Czech, German, and some other groups that immigrated to the area, and so the culture is like really unique. And the style of music that we call Tejano music, which is mainly Mexican American, arose out of Polish and German and Czech, like polka music, and so there all this cross pollination has happened over the past 150 years that just kind of reinforces itself in that area. And a lot of the folklore, Mexican folklore and Slavic folklore, is similarly kind of like dark and weird. And you have like La Llorona and La Santa Muerte in Mexican tradition, and then you have like Morana and all these other figures in Slavic culture. And so it felt like the perfect intersection. And we wanted the main character Zina Krennic to be from the Czech Republic, and for her to have married a Czech Mexican, and her all of her descendants to be kind of like a blend of these cultures. And we started looking into Slavic mythology, and once we like picked up on the iconography that we wanted to use, and which comes from this ceremony where an effigy of the goddess of winter and death, Morana, is taken by children into the forest and then is burned and drowned so you can end winter. It's a kind of a brutal thing to do, but
just so metal. I love that children. It's like, it's
just children to do it. That's right.
Yeah. We had the Cuco, which was like the version of the boogeyman. So ours was the Cuco. Yeah. We did hear about La Llorona. So we had those variations as a
child as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Did your parents used to scare you by saying that Coco was going to come and get you and stuff like
that? 100%. Everything I did. Coco, I blinked the wrong way, and they're coming to get me. So
all y'all's were much cooler than what we had in my hometown. We had the potty witch.
The Yeah,
Well,
but
it
you grew up
was-
in the Lost Kingdom. I'm just
We had a witch that would reach up out of the toilet and pull you down and eat into the sewer and eat. Kind of like it, actually, but she was called the potty witch.
Well, I grew up in New York in the 80s where they still believed in like the alligator was coming out of the sewer pipe thing. So we kind of had something like that.
When you, just to interrupt briefly, like I have a series of cryptids I do for every state, and New Mexico has El Coco and La Llorona and a bunch of different ones. So I wonder,
it's the Coco, which is also called the cuckoo, or it has lots of cucuy. It's like a Mexican American version. It's like a pan Latin American, actually pan Hispanic, because it probably comes out of Mexico, out of Spain, and so there are versions of it in every Latin American country. So yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And once we had figured all the iconography out, I got my daughter, who's a tattoo artist and painter, to do like the initial character sketches, because I could like not pay her anything and just like just whatever. Like,
I'm worried about sounding predatory.
I was gonna say, like,
her creation.
In food, you give her food.
Well, eventually she was pregnant at the time. Eventually, when she had my first grandson, I got to pay in babysitting. So that's fun. Every time she needs to be babysit, she's just like, hey, I designed the matron for you for free. So maybe don't. No, she doesn't. I'm just joking. And so those initial design, the idea of having a painter, tattoo artist designing it was kind of fun, because again, it's like somebody who doesn't work in comics. And then the idea of bringing in Monica, who doesn't normally work in horror, whose style is, a little more, her style is stylized. I just thought it was neat. I like the idea of, because we're doing an interesting twist on the slasher, and to have people who wouldn't maybe normally be working on a slasher comic work on it, it felt right. It felt like that's what we need. We need something completely like, this is kind of weird. I just read an article like literally right before the podcast about how in Mad Max Fury Road, the director had his wife edit it because she had never edited an action film. And so he didn't want like the normal way of framing action. He wanted somebody who had completely a fresh perspective on it to do it. And she won an Oscar for her editing of that film. And that's
really... Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, so that's what I was hoping would happen. And you can already see it in the sample pages that Monica's created, and the character design, and like the great cover that she designed for the first graphic novel volume, because there are going to be 3 volumes of the graphic novel, to 2 issues per. This is a 6-issue miniseries, but we're releasing it early through the Kickstarter, so for people who want to back it. And so that's what you hope for, is like this synergy, this like kind of chemistry that when you bring these elements together that might not normally work, because other people would do a slasher with like a hyper realistic kind of over the top gory kind of thing. But yeah, Drew and I want to do something different with this comic, and so Monica is like the perfect choice. Okay? I just can't get over how awesome it is to see it. Yeah.
No, I love that. I'm so glad like it worked out. Like, so I had seen the Kickstarter when it released, and there's like a sample page on there, and like within, what is it, like 3rd, 4th panel, I was like, oh shit, that's like a whole eyeball, like just out there. So I guess you guys should know, I don't do horror. Like, I'm a big scaredy cat. Like, the only reason why I've seen like the original horror stuff, like, well, not original, but like 80s stuff.
Yeah.
So, the first Nightmare on Elm Street, the first Jason and Halloween and all that stuff. It's because my mom loved horror movies, and she was like, you're going to sit down and you're going to watch this. I'm like, I'm going to piss my pants right here. Right here. So one of the things I was wondering, because for me, like I said, I'm not deep into horror, but obviously I know of horror, and a lot of them are male, the male, like Jason, Freddy, what is it, the Scream guy. But then when you see the females, you have like the Nun and Megan and stuff like that. Was it a conscious effort to make her the matron not that stereotypical female kind of a thing, and make her more like the traditional male ones?
Yeah, for sure. Right. Drew. I mean, we wouldn't have wanted to have, you know, I don't know, like a sexified. I don't even know what that would look like. The matron
Well,
with like,
she's not the bride of Chucky, you know. My crush on Jennifer Tilly is well documented. It's nothing against that character, but you know, we wanted a certain character that looked like she could stand toe to toe with Jason or Michael Myers and be imposing in that way. But also, you know, you know, aside from her being a woman, it's also like an ode to like her working class roots. You know, we talked about this the night we did the launch, but you know, Monica did this great panel where her cloak kind of comes up when she's leaping, and you can see that she has these work boots on it. So there is this weight and gravitas to this character that is very specifically a working class woman. And you know, no, there isn't very, you know, even when there are female movie monsters, they're not usually, you know, blue collar. I mean, you think of it, you know, like they're usually like regal lady vampires, or you know, witch queens, things like that, you know, sexy demonesses. So there's this still this sort of upper crustiness about it as well.
And there's
because it's always through the male lens.
I was
like, it's always objectifying women. Yeah.
Because even like I said, like the nanny, like it's supposed to be working class, because you think of a nanny and you think of, well, I think of like, I don't want to diss any beautiful, you know, nannies out there, but in your head, you have this vision of a person that's not always in makeup and not always in tight fitting clothes, because you've got to run around after these kids, you know? So even when the horror villain is the nanny, she's so prim and proper, and it's like, but she's running after kids. There ain't no way she's wearing like,
and I mean, yeah, one of the things that, I mean, just generally speaking, yeah, we wanted to avoid the whole, you know, cishet male gazy kind of way of looking at characters. We wanted something that was like rooted and realistic. Not that, I mean, obviously, Drew has another comic that has a very pen-up style kind of heroine who is still like really brilliant and badass, and so it's not like you can't navigate that.
But when we just to give you a peek behind the sort of we actually literally had an email thread where we were talking about this kind of thing, and you know, yeah, Lucy from Halloween Man kind of exists in both worlds. Is she has her combat stilettos, and at the same time, she's also always the smartest person in the room. But that still immediately, like, it puts it in like an elevated world. Like, it's not the world that we wanted the Matron to take place in. We wanted something a little bit more down in the mud, you know, or in this case, down in the snow. And so, like, having this sort of cheesecake type character, that would immediately make it stylized in a way that
to me, it would have been uninteresting. I wouldn't have wanted to do it. You know, one of the things that, like, I don't know if anybody else on this episode feels the same way that I do, but I've watched a whole lot. I love all kinds of media, and there's a trope that most recently in a couple of K-dramas and Chinese dramas, I've seen it, but like you see it everywhere, of, you know, the woman passing for a man, pretending to be a man, pretending to be like a soldier or a king, and it's always like, you know, like a physically dainty actress pretending to be a very masculine kind of figure, and everybody being fooled by it. And I'm like, there are plenty of women in the world who are broad-shouldered, broad-backed, like strong working class women who, if they dressed up like a man, might be able to pull this off. That dainty ass actress that, with like her beauty queen like face and so forth is not fooling anybody. And the suspension of disbelief that you have to go through is like ridiculous. And I mean, I enjoy the trope, but it's just annoying to me. And so if we're gonna have a woman be an axe murderer, she needs to physically be imposing, and in both the flashback to the original matron and who gets killed in 1975, and in the present day with her granddaughter, who is a 58-year-old waitress in a cafe, they are sturdy women. They're not like little. And I mean, that's one of the things that I also love about the designs, Monica, that you came up with them. You draw them as like sturdy women, and you could believe I have no problem picking up an axe and like cutting firewood or like lifting heavy things, and because they were single mothers and they've had to do this kind of work their entire lives.
I mean, that was one of the best compliments you gave me when I first did the character sketches, was I believe that she could wield an axe and actually hurt people. It's like exactly what you're saying about, I remember reading interviews with stunt doubles who are women, and it was getting harder and harder for them because the actresses were getting skinnier and skinnier, and so they couldn't even wear padding anymore because the actresses were so skinny that they had to double. And it was like girl, you cannot do these things if you are brittle, like you can't. And so this idea that, and it really, once I became aware of it, now it just like makes me angrier and angrier to see like even just like superhero women who are like Wonder Woman. I'm like, that is not Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman should be built like a rugby player. Like it drives me mad.
Yeah. No, and I get it. Like, and there's a time and place for everything. But for me, like if you're gonna sell to me like Chainsaw Massacre, but female, like I'm not picturing me because I don't have broad shoulders. I can't pick up an axe. Like, I have a picture in my head, and I think that's what I appreciate is that it wasn't from the pages that I saw, it wasn't like a dainty person, because you're like, there's no way like she's swinging anything anywhere. So I also wondered like how conscious of that were you all about it. So I appreciate you guys giving us a sneak peek as how all of that came about, because that's like pretty cool to me. So
yeah, Monica designed these characters in like this kind of like long strip so you could gauge their heights and stuff like that. And these are also tall women. They're 5'10", 5'11", and broad-shouldered older women who have given birth to multiple children, and just they are solid, and I like that. I mean, there's a lot of solid women in my life, whether they're smaller or taller, like just solid women. And one of the weird things about being pansexual is like you get attracted to lots of different types of people, and there is just something though about like a really solid, sturdy woman that is. I think there a lot of people can appreciate that.
Oh hell yeah.
Yeah, I agree, because I definitely did. I think one of the things too that made me go like, oh shit, was the age, because I'm knocking on 50's door. I'm 46, and all the times it's like 20-year-old and 18-year-olds and all of this, and I'm like, holy shit, she's older than I am. Like, that's amazing. You know what I mean? Like I rarely see my age or older represented in any type of form. Like, and then for her to be like a badass, I'm like, I'm here for all of that. So I think that was one of the things also that made me like, no way, they're putting this age out there, and I respect it and I love it, because I mean, after 30, you don't fall off the cliff. You know what I mean? Females are vibrant like into their 80s and even 90s. Like I saw a lady 90 running the Boston Marathon like 2 years ago, something like that. I was like, I could barely make it to the mailbox. Like, you go. Like, so I appreciate the age as well. So I thought that was pretty cool that she's 58, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 58. And and it's important too to the story, because the idea is, and when this winter storm hits in 2021, this woman who spent the last 46 years of her life grappling with her own inner demons and trying to live just basically like a respectable, law-abiding life. Like, working as a waitress, supporting a family, you know, trying to like just give opportunities to her granddaughter to go to college, to be the first person in her family to go to college, even though like she was raised up to the age of 12 by, you know, a cannibalistic serial killer. And just for the combination of the storm, losing her job to gentrification, and losing her home because of an eminent domain dispute. It just, you know, you need to be an older woman that's put up with all the shit that life dishes out to women. And just to be one day like, okay, you have cut off every other recourse I have. You leave me no other choice. But yeah, to pick up an axe, start fucking killing people. You know, you have to be kind of like a 20-year-old girl is not going to be picking up no axe and killing people. She's not reached the end of her rope yet. She'll be like, oh, you know, whatever. She can find some other way to like survive. When you're 58, like life, like this nation especially does not give up flying fuck about 58-year-old women.
That's part of what's brilliant about what you've created too, is that like women are invisible past a certain age.
Yeah.
And that makes them the perfect serial killer.
It does.
Like, and beyond even like she would just be not wearing a mask and people would be like, oh, I don't know, like I have no idea what she looks like. Like we become invisible, and that's a great way to be.
Yeah, we definitely probably that in some of the issues we have, we try to have moments where that mask comes up for a second, and you're as a reader, you're confronted with the fact that this is just a, you know, a middle-aged woman who, I mean,
there's a person under this scary outfit. Yeah, you know,
she's a smart ass too. She's a smart ass 58-year-old woman. I love it. Drew's choices have been really great. Drew, you chose talk a little bit about how you chose to like make her personality when she's killing. It's so cool.
Well, when we were talking about the fact that this was also a generational story, one of the things that the further into you don't necessarily see as much of this in the first two issues, but you do start to see hints of it, is like, what is the difference between the two matrons? And you know what we eventually came upon is that as someone that is rooted in the sort of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, first Halloween, you know, early slasher, you know, the original matron is stone cold serious. Like she is all business. She's just taking people apart. You know, she doesn't say, she has a catchphrase, but she doesn't say a whole lot beyond that. Whereas, you know, the second matron is more Freddy Krueger, Chucky, Ghostface, that sort of quippy, you know, witty slasher that we think of coming into in the 80s and 90s. But also, one of the really fun things that David and I have enjoyed playing around with is that she's a true crime fan. So she's literally quoting other serial killers as she is dispatching people, or she's quoting things that she's read in true crime books. And so, you know, there's this you know, wittiness, because, you know, when you watch a horror film, and this is the sort of literary equivalent thereof, there is part of you that has fun. I call it antisocial wish fulfillment. You have fun watching these slashers just annihilate annoying people, because, I mean, let's face it, there's part of us that goes about our day, and I'm not advocating that you go out and do that, but there is part of us that is like, man, that guy got the last bit of bacon at Wendy's, or this guy cut me off while we were driving, you know, like, and you have that rage. And, you know, watching horror, ingesting horror, you know, it can help us work through those aggressive lizard brain tendencies that we all have. So we wanted this character, even though, you know, look, she's a cannibal, she's a murderer, she's possibly more than that, because there's you know, some
twists and turns,
folk horror elements as well. But you know, we wanted you to also be able to have fun with this character, and you know, there's a particular type of horror, you know, and I think that the Scream movies probably do this the best, where it is, yes, it's scary, but it's also entertaining to watch this character go about her business of annihilating annoying people.
No, I love the fact that you mentioned the Scream films, because this is a way for me to talk about like Roz and Sam, who are, along with Dr. Zeke Gavin, like the trio of like heroes, or, you know, kind of, it's a weird band of people that are being opposed to her, because the second matron also has a granddaughter,
Mm-hmm.
and just like she was named for her grandmother, her granddaughter's named for her. They're like, why you would continue naming people after a serial killer, I know that's going to require some suspension of disbelief. I think I have a good response for it, but
Well, I actually have a question about that, because I was wondering about that too. So I didn't know if it was, so I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no,
you
let's
had
talk
brought
about
it
it.
up, and it was actually one of my questions. Is it that it's just every other person is named Roz because this is now the granddaughter and then their granddaughter, or is
Right.
it females? Because the original could have had a boy, and
Yeah.
that boy had a girl. And then she had a boy who then in turn had a girl. So I was like, how did those two particularly have?
It is kind of like that, except for in that first generation where the original matron had a boy. She had a boy and a girl, and they engaged in incest, and that is that's the yes. It's a messed up. I'm not. It's an R-rated crazy story. So, but you don't see that on, you know, and it's something that's just hinted at, and we'll get into it as the series progresses, as we go into other miniseries. But so there is this, and then the second matron has just a son, and the son has a daughter, names her. So yeah, there is a little bit of that. It's just like the daughters are named Rosina. But they're all, so the first one, Rosina, her actual name in Czech was Rosina, but it became Rosina when she immigrated to the U.S. So the first one is like an immigrant story. She's kind of laconic and so forth, because she, you know, English is her second language. She doesn't learn it until she's like nearly an adult, and so there's a bit of that. And then her granddaughter is the working class one, and then the granddaughter of her is Roz, and she's the first one to go to college, and so she's like different from the others. And she's attending the satellite campus of the University of Texas San Antonio, there in the town of Ascuas, and she started dating this girl, Sam Maldonado, who is the granddaughter of the sheriff who killed the first matron. So that, like, their families have like this weird, like, feudal kind of history. Like, Drew, you always compare it to like the
Hatfields and the McCoys.
See, I was thinking Romeo and Juliet.
Definitely, like,
I wanted.
well, hopefully
I wanted to know.
That's a little classy for me. David has mentioned several times, I'm from Possum Kingdom. I'm the guy that's in this creative team making sure all the redneck stuff is authentic.
Got it. Understood. Well, because I was wondering, with them being from the separate world but still connected, does that add on to the friction of their relationship, or does that strengthen their relationship? Like, hey, I get that that's just our past. We're not carrying our, you know, generational trauma with us into the relationship. Is that like a sneak peek I can like an exclusive I can ask for?
Yes, absolutely. I think initially it strengthens it because it allows them to like stand in kind of solidarity against their families or whatever. And that's all good, and you can be like, yeah, girl, who cares about like our parents, whatever, their grandparents, and, you know, let's stick together. And there's like, and literally like the last scene of them together in issue 2 is, you know, they're talking about all the complications, and Sam says to Roz, well, you know what, it's the you know, the problem ultimately is that your grandmother hates me. And Roz like kisses her, and she's like, well, what is she gonna do to us? And then like and then we shift to the scene of the grandmother, and like now like having assumed her like taken on the role of the matron doing something really devastating, and the reader is like, oh shit, that's what she could do to you. So it's suddenly like when your girlfriend's grandmother goes on a murdering spree, killing like granted wealthy assholes in town, but still killing people, it's gonna cause friction in your relationship. But I was really inspired by the Scream films, the last two. Even though the characters played by Melissa Barrera and by what's her name?
Jenny Ortega.
Yeah, Jenny Ortega. Even though they're like half sisters in the film, I just always like, there's something really kind of cool about their relationship. And I just imagine, what if they had been like girlfriends instead? And you've got, Melissa Barrera playing the daughter of the original killer, and finding out that she's got something in her. She keeps seeing her father's face talking to her and encouraging her to kill. And I just wanted, because we wanted this thing to be an intergenerational kind of thing, where this trauma in this impulse to kill and other things kind of cross generations. And I just wanted to have them like fighting it out. And also like the Fear Street trilogy that was recently made for Netflix really inspired me as well, to have like a sapphic or lesbian romance in the middle of a horror film. I thought that would be really great as a horror comic. It would be really great. So it's an ambitious project, but the things that we're laying the groundwork for with Sam and Roz, they pay off in this miniseries, but also they set up things for future miniseries, because we've got plans for a lot of stuff down the road.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. So this book is 52 pages long. Is it the first and the second one, or is this just the first one?
It's the first two issues.
First two issues. Okay.
Yeah. So the first two issues are combined in one graphic novel. Then the third and fourth will be the second one, and the fifth and sixth will be the third one. Because the comics themselves will start being released like at the end of the year, in comic stores. But this Kickstarter is a way for people to get access to the story now, as Monica and is finishing the art, and Harry is finishing the coloring. We're like wrapping that stuff up and getting it ready to go. And it's just a way for people who are anxious, like we are, to like dig into the story, to get access to it early.
Plus, I think people like to be part of it, like part of the creation, and see it happen and know that they were part of the creative process in a way.
Yeah, and one of the cool rewards that you guys are allowing with the creative process is, depending on one of the rewards, you actually get to be drawn in and by the lady herself. And I was just like, wait, hold up. Yes, and please. And one of those is already sold out. So like, get a move on if you want your face like hanging off by the side. Like, I was like amazed. I was like, that is genius. That is genius. So whose idea was that?
It started out, I made a joke about that, and then one of the IPI guys, Jason Franks, was like, no, we're doing that. Like, that's because I mentioned it as a joke, and I didn't think he was actually going to do it. So cool. Because I big shock here, I have kind of a warped sense of humor. And yeah, I know, surprise. And I think that was actually a moment of when Jason was like, yeah, we're doing that. That was marketing genius, is what that was. I thought
that was so like really cool and so different. So there's been, the more traditional is the thank you at the back of the book. There was one Kickstarter of a friend of mine who actually turned it's a werewolf comic, and there's a person you can turn yourself into that werewolf. So I had him do, like, my husband draw him into the werewolf as a gift, because we're like big fans. So when I saw that, I was like, hey,
yeah, actually be in the book, not just get like some additional art. But
yeah.
So Monica, are you ready for this? Are you ready to like draw somebody's face into it?
I can't wait to draw people getting killed.
Well, one of them is already sold out. So like, I'm looking into which other tiers, and then I'm trying to convince that, because 9 times out of 10, I don't tell them about the Kickstarters. I just back them. And then when they show up, I'm like, surprise.
I think we should, I keep saying we should add, because I think it was something that Monica said. Maybe it was you, right? That said something about maybe like just getting injured, just getting like, I think
Yeah,
pick
your body part.
Yeah, pick your body part and get maimed. So I need,
get ready to get maimed.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
as I said, I'm not a horror person, but 100% I'm gonna like literally see what other tiers there are, and I just want my head cut off, like just clean my
See, pick your body part.
like, you go, your
yeah.
head
Oh
flying.
my god, if you get my curls flying in the air,
That's great.
like no pressure or nothing. I'm just saying. Like if it happens, perfect. If it doesn't, I'm still okay with it. Like
I've heard about certain actors who've been in horror movies that have kept their like decapitated head, like they're like just in their house. They really.
There is one other person on the creative team as well, Harry Saxon. Am I saying his last name right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
He is the colorist, correct?
Yep.
Just want to give him a quick shout out.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yes. Thank God for him.
This has an amazing, like I am very, very blessed, and I hope
obviously you're speechless. Like I've never seen you speechless.
this has an amazing creative team, and I'm not saying that I'm not including myself in that list. I feel like everybody else is like propping my hillbilly ass up. Like when I look at who is all working on this book, like you could cut me out of the equation and I would want to buy this book, because like from top to bottom, like lauded, impressive, like Harry is an Eisner GLAAD award-winning color, like one of the best colorists in the business. Yep. David is outside of being a talented writer, is just a brilliant person. Monica is super talented. What was a fan, like I would be a fan even if we weren't working on a book together. Like I am so fortunate to be seeing this coming. I'm actually, at the time when the Texas Chainsaw Massacre comic didn't happen, I was brokenhearted because I had worked so hard on that pitch, and I knew it was a good pitch. Like I was like, this is like, yeah. And I'm now glad, because like I look at who all I'm working with on this book, and I'm like, fuck, this is an amazing comic book. Like I just,
all I can say is, and I would add to all that, it is really amazing. Everybody's so badass. I will include myself as a badass.
That's so self-praise.
Whatever. I appreciate my own work. But I just want to say, in 5 to 7 years from now, when this creative team is sitting, or maybe walking the red carpet, or like sitting in the audience over the premiere of the film version of the Matron, we're just gonna all look at each other and go, "What the hell? What?" Because
I'm here for it. Let's manifest that. Like I'm here for it, because then that way I can sit and watch the TV and be like, "Holy shit! I knew them back when," and I could pull this all up as a throwback
premiere.
I'm here for all of it, but I'm here for that manifestation, and I'm here.
I'm already starting to like work on my contacts, and I know a bunch of people in Hollywood, so that I've worked with on different things. I do a lot of story consulting and stuff like that, and script doctoring. So this would not be an expensive film to make. And just those of you who are listening right now, who are interested in that kind of thing, this would not be an expensive film to make, and it would be really badass. I just want you to imagine like an actress, like just and we would get an actual middle-aged, sturdy actress, maybe somebody who once had an amazing career and is kind of like has been like kind of forgotten by Hollywood, and bring her back and make her into a badass serial killer. Who wouldn't like jump for that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This reminds me, I need to reach out to Julie Carmen. I'm gonna try to get Julie Carmen to do it. She's like, I mean, like, you can get a stunt double, but you just play the. I bet she would do it
only if she doesn't mind the incessant Fright Night Part 2 questions that I'm going to ask her when we meet.
I need to like make a nucky, because I keep forgetting to email her and say, "Hey, I got a project for you. ¿Cómo estás, Julie?"
But also to the point of Drew with, missing out on, your previous project, like, I just want to throw that out there to all the people that are starting. Like, you're going to hear 1,000 no's. Things are not going to work out the way you want to, but things end up working out the way you didn't realize they should. Because this might not have come to fruition and you don't know where this is gonna take you. Like we're manifesting movie premiere 100%, but when one door closes, break a freaking window and climb out that shit. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
exactly
Like,
right. Exactly right. You got it. I mean, the world waits for no one. You have to make the magic happen yourself, and you have to be your number one fan. You have to be like
yeah.
Halloween Man. There are moments. There have been years that Drew would have loved to have given up, but he didn't give up, and it's still growing strong. And I've had those years as well, where like what, and just I'm 50. I'm about to turn 55. I didn't get my first book published till I was 40.
I had a Kevin Hart moment, like, damn, I didn't
Yeah.
realize he was I thought he was younger than me.
Oh yeah, that's that.
I thought he was younger than me.
Hice un pacto con los dioses indígenas.
Oh, bueno. Okay.
Made a pact with the native gods. Yeah, no, some people just look out. My wife always goes, man, because my wife is older than I am. She goes, look, as the years go by, your people are going to start thinking you're my son or something. It's adorable.
Yeah, I literally thought he was younger than me. I was like, oh, he's probably like 38, 39, 40, no older than 40.
Mira qué linda. Yeah.
No, like seriously, but I was like, so when you said that, I was like, wait, what?
No, I haven't had to dye my hair. My hair isn't falling out. I mean, oh my God, we have now devolved into the silliness, but that's fine.
It's fine. It's all nice and nice. This is where I win you over, and you're like, oh my God, I definitely want to go back to her podcast on my next project. This is where the magic really happens, where I sprinkle my joy, and you're like, I love her.
No, but it is. I'm really excited. I think people are going to really enjoy this miniseries. There's so many layers, so much depth, and we've been talking about it a lot in terms of like horror and folk horror, but it's also got a lot of like really intense drama and like social messages and like just like a centeredness in a particular community in a particular time. The great Texas storm of February 2021, which served to highlight just how badly the far right has been managing the state and what kind of devastation that could cause people. So there's a lot in it for anybody, and if you're not into horror, you can still get a lot out of it. You just got to close your eyes at the panels where there's like blood and eyeballs popping out, and get to the flip to the next page, and there'll be something for you. I promise.
Yeah. Well, we've hit an hour, which is a shocker. It feels like it went by super fast.
Yeah, this is lovely. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so glad. I am super honored again that you guys would come on to my little show and like introduce the world to the matron. Sorry. And at this point, when this airs, it'll be 21 days until the Kickstarter is over. And any words of wisdom and advice that you guys might have for someone that might be feeling like their little project can't get going?
My advice to people whenever they talk about doing comics is to just do it and to finish something. Because people, and myself included, like you start with this like magnum opus that you want to do and you have all these ideas. It's like just do a little something and then give it to everybody and just talk to people and then keep going. You're going to be shitty for a while, and then someday you'll be less shitty, and that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, exactly. You'd have to work at it. But I love that is a great, Monica. The idea of completing something is super important, because a lot of people they spend a lot of time with their OCs, with their original characters, and dreaming up all these ideas, and over time, they draw sketches and they have the story in their head and it keeps growing. But like, you need to have a product that you can show people, something you can put in their hands. If it's just like a little, short story, like a little, a one-page thing, whatever, you need something completed that shows your ability to tell a story, to illustrate it, to color it, to letter it. You need to, and like, especially if you're an artist, you need to show that you can do all those things, even if later in life you choose to just do one. You need to show people that you did it all. And if you're a writer, you just have to write a lot, and you have to not be afraid to submit to a lot of places, and you can't be afraid of the word no, because people are going to tell you no 1,000 times before you get a yes. And that's just the way that's just the way of it. And you have to believe in yourself and push forward. And it takes, the saying is, it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. So if you haven't put in 10,000 hours of drawing or writing or whatever, you're not going to be where you need to be. Drew has put in like 100,000 hours at this point after 25 years of doing this.
Yeah, but I might be crazy. Two things. The first one, don't ever throw anything away. Because you never know when something that you made years ago may crawl out of its grave and become something new. And this is a great example of that. This was a project that started out as a project that did not happen, and I was heartbroken, and now it became something else. Also, redefine what you think is success. I've been in the comic book industry for almost 25 fucking years, and I've never worked with a big corporate, well-known character. In fact, the Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing that didn't end up happening, that is the closest I've ever gotten to working with mainstream properties. I've never done a DC character. I've never done a Marvel character. Yeah, I would love to do that. Don't get me wrong. Like I could write Spider-Man. I would love to write Fantastic Four. That's my great white whale. But hey, that was a literary reference. I'm smart. You should also not think of that as the beginning and end of your career, because there's lots of people that work in this medium and they never do a Batman story. They never do a X-Men story. And that's okay, because comic books are an art form. They are a storytelling. And in my opinion, they are the best way to tell a story. There is no other. If I felt some other way about it, I would be a novelist, but I love being involved in the creation of comics. So I have, in the last few years, I've started to really embrace, instead of what 18-year-old Drew thought his career was going to be, I've embraced what my career has become. And that's actually opened the doors towards stuff like this, which is, great. And, it's not what I imagined, but it is also awesome.
Awesome. Great. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode about the Matron, then go to the Kickstarter right now before time runs out. And if you want more comic book horror, check out this episode where I interview the creators of Stilettos.